we're gonna tell you why we almost moved to Englewood, Florida.
But we ultimately moved to Venice, Florida. We're gonna give you the whole story and all the reasons, and we're getting started right now.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home in the area, make sure to contact me. I am a local realtor here. My information will be in the description box below.
So we gave the story on the previous video about why we almost moved to Northport, because that was another strong contender, and we'll give you a quick rundown here. Basically, we were in Orlando. That city was a little too busy for us, and so we made this whole trip. Basically, there was like a couple random scattershot trips from time to time where we checked out kind of the East Coast, the Atlantic Coast, but then we made one big trip down the Gulf Coast because we decided we liked the Gulf Coast most. Ended up being between Sarasota, Venice, Englewood, and Northport. Those were like our four big ones in consideration.
Yes, and we quickly realized that Sarasota was basically out of our budget. But not only that, it was a bigger city. We thought it was bigger. Now going to it and visiting, it's like, oh, it's okay. It's not that bad. It's not that big. But moving from Orlando to Sarasota, we knew that we didn't want a big city. And in our minds, that's what Sarasota was.
Seemed like it. Yeah.
Yes. So we quickly just realized, okay, Sarasota is not going to work for us. So now we're thinking Englewood, Northport, and Venice.
Yeah, and basically, I think one of the biggest reasons we almost moved to Englewood was because Venice is here, which is our favorite. We loved Venice, yes. Instantly fell in love with it, but it was a little bit more expensive than Englewood, which was here, and they're both on the Gulf Coast, like right on the beach. And then Northport was in consideration here, or maybe here, depending on which the camera flips it.
More inland,
and you could get even more house for your money in Northport. But Englewood, you kind of got a little more house for your money, but you also got the beach.
Yes, and in Northport, you got a lot more house for your money, but you didn't have the beach.
Yeah, and I think we'll throw this out there right now. She works with a lot of real estate clients, right? And so the feedback we get from Englewood is pretty mixed.
Yes.
When people first see it, and I think we fell into the camp of the people that maybe not quite as much to that level. Like some people just don't like it. They see it and they're like, no, Englewood's run down, or it's trashy, or you name the description of not desirable, and you'll hear that. I think we didn't think it was bad, but we didn't like it as much as, say, Venice
or even Northport.
Yeah, but I don't think we thought it was like terrible. It's just not quite as nice.
It was too much of an all Florida feel that we weren't a big fan of
at the
time. And coming from Wisconsin, the Midwest, anytime you see mobile homes or manufactured homes, you associate those homes with people that maybe don't have a ton of money, maybe a little more run down, maybe a little more dangerous even. In Florida, that's not the case at all.
Yeah. A lot of people do that to just get down to Florida, do it on the cheap, whether it's a second home or just making the move in general.
Or if they're retirees, they maybe don't need a big house, like a 3-bed, 2-bath might be too big for them. And it might need a lot of upkeep, so they just go the mobile home route or the manufactured home because there is a lot less to upkeep with that.
Yeah, so we saw some of that, and at the time it didn't seem like there was a lot of shopping, but after visiting it some more, we realized, no, there's actually plenty of shopping. I mean, certain things they don't have that maybe you would want, but they got plenty of grocery store options, plenty of a fair amount of department stores. It's actually almost plenty.
Yes.
And then you're also very close to Port Charlotte, which we realized later was a great option for, like, they have a mall and things like that and a lot of other shopping.
Yeah, so you're not too far out from Sarasota, Fort Myers, even Venice, which doesn't have a ton of shopping, but it has a little bit. So you're not too far, and we realized that, I think, after we had moved down.
Yeah.
Or made our decision anyway.
And it's interesting how, like, after we've moved to Venice and every time we go to Englewood, whether just to hang out or with your clients, we're always like, man, Englewood's nice. We should get out here more often. Like, we should go hang out on Dearborn Street or the Beach Road at night sometime.
Yes.
Which we do get out to those areas a fair amount, but not as much as we would like to. And I feel like some of the things we weren't sure about with Englewood, like, are gone. They're out the window, and it's like, I think we would have loved Englewood just fine.
And one of the big reasons I feel like why we were strongly considering Englewood was because we got, we would have the beach and we would also have a nice house. So for the amount that we would pay in Venice, we would have gotten a nice house, maybe new construction even, and the beach. So it was like the best of both worlds.
And just to give you an idea, and keep in mind, this is current market prices. Back when we were looking, probably shave off about 100K, 150 maybe.
Yes.
But current prices for Englewood is...
For a single family home, $430,000.
And Venice?
$560,000, but that is the city of Venice, so that's the island, which is a little more expensive. South Venice, it's a little less expensive, and the median home price is $380,000.
And so like she mentioned, there was also the opportunity in Englewood to get a house, you know, similar size, similar price, maybe even a little bigger, but that was new construction. And the idea of having a new construction home was also very appealing. Keep in mind, not all of Englewood is that way. There's plenty, like most of Englewood, I would say, is a little bit older, about the same age as Venice. But on the kind of east and southern end, there's a little bit more options for houses that are a little bit more new. And I remember when we were looking, there was a few that we looked at kind of closer to Rotonda West that had a lot of wow factor, like wow, super upgraded, really big,
modern, and yeah, it was maybe not top of the line, but pretty top of the line for the budget anyway.
Lots of upgraded materials and little touches. But then there was also ones we looked at that were a little more cookie cutter, not as many upgrades. Layout wasn't anything amazing, and we just felt kind of meh about it. But at the same time, it's still a new house, which is nice, and it looked nice enough.
Yes, and nothing can beat like the smell and the feel of a new house. So that was a pretty tough decision because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as a lot of the other little things, like we did our research on all the cities kind of in the area, and that's kind of how we came down to like Sarasota, Venice, Englewood, Northport. But Englewood, like a lot of the other cities in the area, rated pretty well on all the websites that we found as far as like crime, schools, all that. It overall is a really good option. So on that side of things, like it was kind of like Venice was maybe a little bit better, but not way better.
Yeah. And as far as Englewood population-wise, the population is a little older. So there was second thoughts there, just because we thought maybe we would fit in better in Northport because that's where all the younger people are. They do have quite a few snowbirds as well, but mainly I would say younger families.
Yeah, and I mean, we ultimately decided to move to Venice, which has also probably just about equal amount of snowbird and older population, but you know, it still worked out okay here. And I think, again, in Englewood, that wouldn't have been an issue.
Yes, and I think a lot of it too was just our perspective. I thought that, you know, by just looking at area vibes, niche.com, and just doing some research online and on YouTube, we thought that Venice and Englewood were mainly retirees, snowbirds, and yes, that is very true, but there are also a lot of newer families, younger families, people our age. We'll leave that to your imagination, whether about how old we are, but people, you know, in their, I would say 30s to 50s. Yeah. I would consider that younger for this area anyway, that are moving to the area. So that's definitely changing the way the city feels.
Absolutely. And I think another thing too, I liked like Dearborn Street, that downtown area when we first came to Englewood. Beach Road I thought was real cool by the main Englewood beach, but ultimately I think we both liked the Venice downtown more. I think still do slightly, but not as much as I used to. Like every time we go to Dearborn Street and like maybe go to Joe Max for coffee or Mango Bistro, I love that place. Every time we go to one of those places, I'm just like, yeah, I like the vibe here. It's just different.
It's just different, yeah. I mean, I prefer Venice, and Venice is downtown because it's bigger, it's more upkept, it's clean. Englewood, it's not that it's not clean. Right now it's a mess because it's under construction.
Yeah. And it's going to be really nice once it's done,
It's going to, yes. But there is not as many restaurants, I feel like, and not as many shops. So for just walking around or going to like a certain restaurant that you like or a coffee shop, it's perfect.
And it's mainly just one street.
Yeah.
Venice is downtown. You kind of get a couple of the side
3,
streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a little bigger downtown too in Venice.
Yeah, Venice, I would say it's more like a small city, while Englewood is like a true beach town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I can see why to some people, again, like when they first come and like when we first came, you're not really sure if you, like some people just for sure don't like it. We weren't really sure how we felt about it. It was like, well, will we make a mistake buying a home here? Will we end up hating it? And then you got some people that just, they're like, yes, this is it. I love it.
Yes.
And we were kind of in the middle, I think.
Yes, and I think it's just different, perceptions depending on where you're coming from. If you see a ton of mobile homes in the area, you're like, oh, like this is a really bad city. It just depends where you're coming from. I think we were a little more open-minded because of the city in Wisconsin that we were coming from, and being in Orlando for a little while, it was like, okay, like I get it. But for someone who doesn't come to Florida a lot or is not familiar with Florida, that might be like red flags everywhere.
Yeah.
Which it's definitely not the case.
Yeah, so ultimately I think it just came down to we get a lot of the things we like out of Venice, but it's a little bit cheaper, could maybe get a newer home. Northport, quite as many of the things you like to do. You're not as close to the beach, but you got a newer home, way newer, or pretty new, and way nicer, bigger, for your money. And this was another dynamic that we were considering when we were considering Northport that I think also applies to Englewood, is like also, well, if we want to go to Venice, it's just a short drive up to Venice. We could go down to Punta Gorda, which we liked Punta Gorda quite a bit. Port Charlotte's nearby with the mall. So like all that combined made it very difficult when you're like balancing all these different factors. And I think ultimately we scratched Englewood off the list completely, and it ended up being Northport and Venice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as easy like of a clear-cut thing as it seems. It just was like at the time we were looking, there wasn't like a house that was a contender in Englewood.
Yeah, there were a few that we liked, a few new construction homes that we like, and we were like, yeah, this would work. But it wasn't like in Northport, like the 3 houses that we really, really like. It was like clearly, if we went Northport, it was because of those 3 houses.
Yeah, exactly.
Englewood, it was like, whatever, the houses are kind of similar. They all kind of look the same. Not great, but not bad either. A good budget, and you still get the beach. But yeah, ultimately, I think it was very, very tough between Venice and Northport.
And I do remember a couple of the houses that we did wow us, and we probably would have put more into consideration. There was 2 things that, for me at least, made it like, oh, I don't know, I'm going to scratch those off the list. 1, they were a little bit higher priced than we wanted, and 2, it was a little bit further away from the city of Englewood and the beach and all that stuff, so it would have made it a little bit more of a drive to get to kind of some of the stuff we wanted to do. So then it's like, at that rate, why not just go to Northport?
Yeah, Northport or Venice. Yeah. And yeah, those houses, they were more on the area of Englewood that's not as developed. Like it is getting pretty developed now. There is quite a few homes, but at the time we were looking, it wasn't as much.
If you want to see a little more about why we ultimately decided to move to Venice and like the things about Venice that drew us to the area, right here is a video that you can watch, and we go really in depth in that video.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home in the area, make sure to contact me. I am a local realtor here in the Venice, Sarasota, Englewood, Northport areas. My information will be in the description box below.
Hit the like button, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and
Live breezy.